All right, folks, welcome back to the channel. You found us here at KGB Customs, home of what we believe is some of the best custom gun content on the web. We share these custom guns in hopes of sharing some knowledge and to catalog some of the great pieces that come through our shop. Thank you for joining us. If you guys haven't already, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the channel. If you really appreciate the things we present here, jump into the description and you'll find a link to join our email list there. That email list is used to announce new arrivals and any other shop news we might have here. We appreciate you all following along. Today we've got a really lovely 6-gun here, built by Single Action Service, Alan Harton, Houston, Texas. Alan has been customizing Ruger and Colt 6-guns. I should say Ruger and Colt pattern. He'll work on the Italian clones as well. But the Ruger and Colt 6-guns for several decades now, and is really an excellent hand at them. This one is a Ruger. We'll call it an old Vaquero, original Vaquero, large frame Vaquero, whatever you want to call it. When the Ruger Vaquero was first introduced in 1993, it was on the large Black Hawk size frame. Ruger prior to that had not offered a centerfire revolver with fixed sights. The closest would have been the drift sight adjustable 32 H&R single sixes, but all of the Black Hawks had all been adjustable sight guns. And in the early 90s, cowboy action shooting was gaining a lot of popularity, and the demand for a rugged, reliable, fixed sight revolver was at an all-time high. Prior to that, everyone saw the adjustable sight as a feature and not as a hindrance. Though we did see some very early customizations of the flat-top Blackhawks, the guys would weld up the sight cut and cut a Colt-style trench in there. And there's some really beautiful customs done that way to emulate the Colt look on those early Blackhawks. I've come close to picking one up a time or two, but you don't see them very often. And I myself am an adjustable sight guy, so, you know, they aren't really appealing to my purposes here. Go down the list of features here. We've got the build sheets from Alan, which Alan is super old school. Alan uses these carbon copy invoice papers and just has a rubber stamp with his information on it. So no custom receipt letterheads, none of that stuff. Alan really prefers to talk over the phone versus email or text. I talk to Alan fairly regularly. I've had him worked on lots of Colt style single actions for me, which is his preferred work these days. He will still do some Ruger work for close customers and friends, but most of the work he takes in, I think he prefers working on the Colt single action army pattern. So we started, like I said, with a large frame Ruger Vaquero here, a recut trigger sear, recut full cock notch. He added a Bisley hammer, milled off the hump of the hammer. So these hammers would have had a larger hump back here that needs dressed down to fit with the plow handle grip frame here, because the Bisley grip frame has higher ears up top here. So it blends with the Bisley grip frame because that's what Ruger designed it to do. Alan customizes it to fit with the plow handle. And that gives you a low, wide hammer spur that's easy to reach instead of being up here by the rear sight. Much easier to grab a hold of and cock. He milled the butt of the grip frame to match the bottom of the grips. This is a set of Chig's grips. Of course, Ruger grip frames kind of run the gamut on sizes. So custom fit grips are a must for a nice custom Ruger. He milled the bottom of the grip frame off to come up to the grips because you can't make the wood any longer. And they're a beautiful set of English walnut grips by Chig's, but they were, you know, fit to a shorter grip frame than what this gun had. So Alan milled that off to blend the bottom. These are a flat bottom grip. And then he proceeded to fit the front and back, which probably included removing some wood some places, some metal other places to bring the two pieces together. And then he refinished the grips, and they're really a lovely set of grips. I'll remove the barrel warning. Of course, Ruger has been putting a liability warning on their barrels for many years. He added a Smith & Wesson J-frame rear sight. So the original rear sight was just a trough on these guns. He fit the Smith & Wesson J-frame rear sight, which is very similar in size to the pre-war Smith & Wesson sight. They're very, very small, petite sights, and they fit these Ruger Vaqueros very well. That job necessitated welding up the trench as it proceeded off the front of the frame here. Alan also dressed that weld. You can't even tell it's there, and dressed the barrel frame junction down to this very smooth Colt single action style juncture here. And that's just a graceful touch that Alan added to this gun. He has a great eye for that stuff. A blended weld, milled top strap for rear sight installed. He made a stainless steel front sight base. So this front sight base has a gentle ramp at the back and then flutes on the side to cut down on the sharp corners. And then custom front sight blade there at about, I don't know, 15 or 20 degrees. So a semi-patridge black serrated front sight, which is my preferred front sight for field use, target use. Made carbon steel sight blade, opened and polished the cylinder throats, and cut black powder chamfer on the cylinder. Of course, his black powder chamfer is just delightful. I've had it done on several Colts of my own, and he does just a great job of keeping those symmetrical from flute to flute, and does a nice heavy bevel without it looking like it was done on a grinding wheel. He installed new trigger spring and etched the barrel, high polished the screws, and did a brush finish on the stainless steel. So what we have at the end of that is a gun that has an easy to grab onto hammer, a fantastic trigger on it, great sights that you can see and adjust over the original, the half moon front sight on these Vaqueros and the trench rear sight. Also added a locking belt mountain number 5 style base pin. Alan has built number 5 clones and has a great respect for those early guns and gunsmiths. I've shared a few guns with him over text, and you can tell that he enjoys that stuff, just like the rest of us. The gun is super handy package. You got a 4 5/8 inch barrel, and being a large frame Vaquero, this can handle hot 45 Colt, full house 45 Colt. I shouldn't say full house. It's not a 5-shot gun, so it won't handle Casull level pressures, but any factory 45 Colt ammo is good to go in this gun. Unlike the new Vaquero, which Ruger introduced in 2005, again at the behest of cowboy action shooters who wanted a more petite package, more Colt size package. So this frame is bigger and heavier than a Colt single action Army. Of course, that gave it the ability to handle 44 Magnum and hot 45 Colt. But the cowboy action guys don't want all that power, so they pushed Ruger, and Ruger eventually came out with what Ruger calls a mid frame, which is close to the original 357 Blackhawk flat tops in size. So a slightly smaller frame, and they did chamber that in 45 Colt, of course, but not 44 Magnum. They did eventually make some in 44 Special. 357 was super popular in them as well. And 45 Colt was probably their best seller. Those mid-frame 45 Colts will not handle the pressure that these large frame guns will. So what we have is, what John Taffin would have called a perfect packing pistol. It's not a super big, not a super heavy gun, but it'll handle any 45 Colt you want to put in it and ride on the hip just beautifully for miles and miles. I really love the way he blended this J-frame rear sight in it, and I know he's mentioned the J-frame rear sight in our chats, and I have not yet committed to sending him a Colt single action Army to have it installed. I'd really love to find an end-frame pre-war rear sight, as I've seen that rear sight put into single action Armies, the custom guns of, the 50s and earlier, as an adjustable sight solution for the single action Army. And I really just would love to use one of those original pieces if I was going to cut on a Colt that way. But I haven't done it yet. I haven't found the right sight. I've got the base gun. I just don't have the sight. What else? The Ruger's Vaquero, being a new model gun, so there's a new Vaquero and a Vaquero. Both are new model guns, and what we mean by new model guns is they have a transfer bar safety in them. So the transfer bar safety was invented by Ruger so that these guns could safely carry 6 rounds loaded. Right now, as I have the trigger depressed, the transfer bar is up and over the firing pin, and thus the firing pin is depressed and protruding from the breech face. When I let go of this trigger, the gun, you'll hear an audible click if you've ever handled one of these guns. And that's not the trigger resetting, like many think of, on a double action revolver or a semi-automatic. That's the transfer bar resetting back below the firing pin. So now that the hammer is resting forward on the frame, the transfer bar is no longer between the firing pin and the hammer, and now the firing pin is retracted, and you can safely put 6 rounds in here, and you can hit this with a sledgehammer and it's not going to go off. Unlike the guys who would carry a Colt, say, Colt pattern, or an early Black Hawk with the hammer on half cock or the safety notch. Of course, if you hit those hammers hard enough, you'll break the safety notch or the trigger sear, and that hammer will go forward against the primer and potentially fire the gun when you don't want it to. There were, instances of those guns falling out of holsters and the hammer hitting a rock and the guns going off. Instances of a stirrup falling off when putting a saddle on a horse and hitting the hammer and firing the gun. And of course, those are all bad deals, right? Not a good thing. So Alan, single action service, Houston, Texas. He's an old name in custom 6-guns, and he's done it largely without the use of the internet, which is, as a young gunsmith, pistol smith, the internet has been an amazing tool for getting word out about your work. Alan's done this all very quietly. Of course, being in Texas and working on 6-guns is a pretty good place to be if that's what you want to work on. But still, getting notice out to other parts of the world, other parts of the country where people need that kind of work or want that kind of work and don't have a local guide. Alan was blessed to be noticed by John Taffin and noticed by others on the Ruger forum and other forums who put word out there on the internet for him, so to speak, by talking about his work and sharing pictures of his work out there on the web and in American Handgunner. Jeff and Boj Quinn wrote about him on Gun Blast. And that's the kind of guy he is, a very modest guy, capable of some of the finest and most intricate 6-gun work you could want, and yet isn't out there hunting for more work. He's busy enough as it is, and isn't out there tooting his own horn. So, of course, we've got to do a video like this to toot his horn for him and share with you guys what Alan does with these Vaqueros. And he's done a number of them this way. I think he did one. I think he may have done one for Taffin that was a 3-cylinder arrangement in 38-40, 10 millimeter, and 40 Smith & Wesson, which would be an excellent do-all gun. Of course, you've got the capability of shooting a wide berth of ammo there, from very readily available shelf ammo in 40 Smith & Wesson and 10 millimeter to heavier 10 millimeter specialized loads for backcountry use or hunting. And then the 38-40, which of course, modern reloaders and Line Ball and others have amped up the 38-40 with modern brass to be a very, very potent cartridge, akin to like a 10 millimeter Magnum. So the projects like that got him a lot of notoriety in the 6-gun community. He's my go-to expert for single action army work. If you need single action army work, don't hesitate to reach out to Alan. You'll have to give him a call on the phone, is all I can tell you, because he might check his email. He usually does. The first time I reached out to him was by email, and I think his wife might have emailed me back and gave me his cell phone number to call him. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and enjoyed this custom 6-gun. Custom 6-guns are one of my favorite things to share, and I really enjoy the different work, I guess, that gets done on these guns versus magazine-fed semi-automatic pistols. Thanks for tuning in.